The United States Postal Service quietly rolled out their brand new proposed rule that very well could determine whether you get to cast a mail-in or even absentee ballot. And yes, if it goes through, the USPS, which has had all kinds of staffing and financial issues for years, may actually be the ones to determine whether your vote is counted. Now, I'm going to explain this new proposed rule and why USPS thinks it has the power to do any of this in a second. But first, I want to thank my paid Facts HQ subscribers for voting for this story as the bonus this week. If you want to vote on next week's bonus story and get some other cool perks from me, just follow these easy steps and become a paid subscriber too. It is because of my awesome paid Facts HQ subscribers that I'm able to report the news for you every single day. Without them, my channel would disappear. So if you want to support my work, and of course only if you can, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. Okay, so this new USPS rule comes from this, an executive order President Trump signed on March 31st called Ensuring Citizenship Verification and Integrity in Federal Elections. Trump signed that order after he started to realize that the Senate was not going to allow his Save America Act to pass. So he did this instead, because he, of course, believes elections are rigged and there's all kinds of fraud, especially when it comes to mail ballots, even though there's no evidence to back up that claim in any widespread way. And before I explain what USPS wants to do, you need to understand the two main things Trump's executive order does. One, it directs the Secretary of Homeland Security to compile what Trump calls the state citizenship list. DHS will compile this list of eligible American citizens over the age of 18 based on federal citizenship data, naturalization records, social security records, and other records from other relevant federal databases. That list will then be given to the states, and then the states can cross-reference that citizenship list with the voters that they have as registered voters on their roll. Just being on the citizenship list, by the way, is not enough to vote. Voters would still have to register with the state. And part two of this order is why the Postal Service believes it has any say over whether you can use a mail-in or absentee ballot. This Trump executive order gives USPS all kinds of new powers over which mail-in or absentee ballots can or cannot be delivered to you and to your elections office, according to USPS's new proposed rule that they quietly rolled out last week. Within 90 days of an election, the state must notify the post office that it intends to allow its registered voters to vote by mail in the upcoming election. Within 30 days of that election, the state must provide USPS with a state-specific participation list. That list will determine who is and is not eligible to have a mail-in or absentee ballot delivered to their home or delivered to an election office once the ballot is completed. The list will include names of eligible voters along with their addresses. The rule says the states will retain full control over who is and is not included on these lists, and the post office says it will not change the names on the list. But the proposed rule says the post office will be responsible for adding a serialized intelligent mail barcode to every name on the list so that each voter's specific ballot can be tracked directly back to them. USPS says this rule will help determine how many ballots were mailed out and would allow state officials to compare that figure with the number of ballots that were returned so they can detect any potential fraud issues. The rule says if your name is not on that list for whatever reason, even if you are a valid registered voter who is eligible to vote by mail or vote absentee, too bad. You're not getting a ballot. And even if you somehow try to mail a completed ballot but your name is not on the list, the post office will not deliver your ballot and your vote will not be counted. This proposed rule does not apply to primary elections or military overseas ballots, but it will apply to the general, special, or runoff elections. Okay, so there are a bunch of issues here. Let's start with the constitutional one. First of all, Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution clearly and unequivocally gives the states the power to control their elections how they see fit, and it gives Congress the power to create laws to govern those federal elections. The Constitution gives the President of the United States zero power to do anything related to the election. Nothing, nada, zilch, including this. The Constitution does not give the President the power to give the post office the power to do anything related to the election either. Second, Congress has not passed any federal law resembling what Trump ordered in that executive order. So it falls to the states to govern. And until Congress makes it a federal issue, Trump cannot force feed what he wants the states to do on his own. And he certainly can't try to control an election by giving the post office these random new powers. And third, the federal government, by way of the post office, does not get to deem which voters are eligible to vote by mail or absentee. The state gets to decide how that process works. not the president, and certainly not the Postal Service. And keep in mind, we're talking about the same Postal Service that's been in financial trouble for decades and has serious staffing problems. Our poor mail carriers are stretched so thin, and now they're also going to be responsible for determining mail-in ballots and absentee ballots? Who's going to watch to make sure these postal employees actually follow these lists? What if there's something wrong with the list? Or what if a postal employee just doesn't like someone on the list? There are a lot of questions here. Look, I told you in this video last week that a group of voting rights advocates sued the Trump administration over this entire executive order because of all the things I just talked about. They were trying to get a federal judge to block this order from moving forward at all. But last week, the judge said no and refused to stop Trump's order. Not because the judge said what President Trump was doing was completely legal. The judge refused to block Trump's executive order because he said Homeland Security and USPS had not acted on that order yet, so there was nothing to dispute yet. Well, now that this USPS proposed rule is here, I fully expect those same plaintiffs to refile their lawsuit, and they will probably do it again when Homeland Security issues its proposed rule about that citizenship list. Now, if you have thoughts on this post office proposed rule, which I'm sure you do, you can submit your public comments to the Federal Register within the next 30 days. And if you want to do that, I will email you the link in my next Facts HQ email, which of course is free, so make sure you sign yourself up.